I hope you're all so excited to learn about the new Best Literacy test. um, I will try to go fast. We're a little bit behind, but I think that we'll be okay. We'll just see how this goes. I've never done a Best Literacy training before on Zoom, so this is new for everyone involved. And can you all hear me, by the way? I hope okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. Heads nodding. Thank you. Right. Most of you know me. I'm Amy. As billed in the advertisement email, I'm a trainer for Best Plus assessments, which doesn't really qualify me to train on Best Literacy, but there are some similarities in the manual. Actually, I found it in this new version, which I have just learned. I'm still learning it. It's very new, so I've had the opportunity to give the test one time to students, and I scored one test just yesterday, last night. So I feel like I'm grateful that I could at least get one under my belt. So I have some personal experience with the scoring. So it helped me. Just a fun fact, this is totally random, nothing to do with Best Literacy, but I realized today that tomorrow is my 20-year anniversary at LSS. 20-year anniversary. So tomorrow will be 20 years. Also 20 years in adult education in South Dakota. So this was a fun fact. Okay, so because I'm new to this and there are no materials, I don't have materials for training that Cal has, created or supplied to us. I'm going to be using my document camera here, so I'll just be kind of flipping back and forth to show you guys sections of the manual, the test manual, score sheets, and the test booklet. So I'll be doing a lot of flipping around. Hopefully you don't get dizzy or anything like that. So this training is just going to be an overview. It's an overview of the test, talking about important changes from the old Best Literacy to the new Best Literacy, and some protocols that I've read in the manual for administering the test. If we have time, I was hoping to do a little bit of scoring together, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes if we get to that at the end. So first, I wanted to ask actually everybody, I thought I had heard that LSS was maybe the only program in the state that used the old Best Literacy. Here's an example. This is the old one. The new one looks very similar, but are there any other programs, not LSS people, who have used or do use the Best Literacy test in your program?
We did use, but we give it up several years ago as not being something that was really useful for us.
Okay. And
uses it.
Sorry, Jennifer, you said
we use it.
You guys use it. Okay. I'm just trying to gauge how much familiarity there was with the older version of the test. Thank you. Yeah, so it's time. The old version of the Best Literacy was created in 2006. And so now they've updated it, which is good. I think the main changes as far as updating the test was there was check writing. Yeah, Jen, it's the least used NRS assessment. I can see that. There was check writing in here where the student had to fill out a check. And there was also addressing an envelope, which, what do you know? Those are apparently totally useless life skills now. And so even Americans don't know how to do that, I think. Many. we gave this assessment to a couple students who were born in another country, but they had lived here since they were 4 and 6 years old, you know, so they're basically native English speakers almost at this point. Because their speaking was so high, I gave them the best literacy instead, and they did terrible on writing checks and addressing envelopes. They had no idea, even though they grew up here. So they were about 20 years old-ish, something like that. So these skills are no longer relevant. So those are some major changes to the new version of the best literacy, as well as the test items are, it's quite different. It's quite different, and I'll be showing you. I'll be showing you parts of the new version of the test, and I'll be showing you the score sheet too. And the scoring is really almost completely different, actually. So I had a lot to learn before doing this training. This is the new test manual. It's sizable. It's at least 3 times as big as the old as the old manual. So there's quite a lot of information in here. I'm just giving an overview today, so I would say definitely your program will need to purchase this manual for yourself to learn the scoring, and there's quite a few scoring examples in here. I'll show some today, but there's many pages of examples, of which of course I can't show everything today. So I would say at least one for each program, potentially one for each location, depending on your situation, so that this can be a reference for you. Okay. So let me go down my little checklist here. Tickle in the throat, just a moment, excuse me. So, as I said, this is just an overview today. Cal has, excuse me. I hope my voice is doing okay. Cal has a self-paced online training available. As you may have seen, it's $50 per participant, or they say that you can just train yourself with the manual. So reading through the manual is sufficient for Cal to consider you trained in giving and scoring the test. My voice, excuse me, one moment. Apologies. I hope that stops happening. It just goes out at the worst times. The old version of Best Literacy can be used through June 30th of next year. So in this current fiscal year, the old version is still valid and the new version is valid. So they're both concurrently valid for this fiscal year to be used for pre and post testing. So.
And Amy, of course, I'd be remiss if and you're likely going to touch on it, but it's important to remember that whatever pre-test we use, we have to use the same instrument for the post-test. We can't pre-test on the old version and post-test on the new version, of course.
Right, yes, thank you, John.
And then as we think about moving tests forward, when it comes to January 1st or thereafter, there's no ability to move forward a Best Literacy 1.0 score into program year 25, 26. So we got to keep that in mind as well. Thanks.
Yes, right, John, good point. So if you have a new student who is entering your program now and you choose to use Best Literacy, it would probably be in your best interest to use the new version, which is 2.0, so that if the student carries over into next fiscal year, you'll be able to push forward that assessment if needed. So the Best Literacy test is 60 minutes maximum, which is the same as the old version. And let's talk about who the test is for. I'm going to show you in the manual here. Sometimes it's nice to visualize things and you don't have to just look at my face and listen to my voice the entire time. Let me okay. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is the manual. Let me make that a little bigger. Okay, oops, too big. Oh my goodness, get the hang of this here. So I'll let you go ahead and read this for a moment while I cough.
Does anyone remember the maximum time for Best Literacy 1.0? Was it,
It was also 60 minutes.
was it? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, excuse me, everyone. Yes, 60 minutes. This is 60 minutes. Which it's interesting in this manual that it says the suggested maximum test. Like, I don't know what that means, but that's what the manual says.
You know, and if I were to conjecture, and not that you invited that, but my sense is like with all of our tape assessments, we can have the latitude to give additional time, but without documentation, without 504 IEP, accommodation plan, etc. Test publishers have to because of the psychometrics, have to sort of have that caveat that you can adjust the times, but that will affect the scoring, its validity and reliability. So we have to keep that in mind as well as it relates to reporting purposes.
Thank you, John. And yes, later on in this training, I'll talk a little bit about accommodations that Cal does suggest and allow for. So this is who the test is designed for. Let me unshare for a moment. The purpose of the test, I'm going to flip again to the manual. Let the manual speak for itself. The purpose of the test is to assess the English language development in reading and writing of adult English language learners in the United States. English language development is understood as proficiency in the underlying competencies that enable the performance of communicative language functions in English. And they would say this test assesses the ability to read and write everyday English language within topic areas generally covered in adult English language courses. So it's really the reading and writing version of the Best Plus test, which is interpersonal communication skills. It's not really academic in nature necessarily. And this is just sort of the literacy version of that. It is not necessarily designed for, transition to higher education. This is really life skills, everyday English language test. From there, that's what the test is designed to measure. I will actually go ahead and I'll wait for that for later, actually. But let me just quickly show you a list of the type of items that the test shows. Again, this is from the manual. Okay, that's too big. So this paragraph right here, I need to make it bigger for you. Is it too small to see? Or is that okay?
Looks good to me.
Okay, it's a long list, which I don't feel the need to read for you. Okay, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so these are the kinds of things that you'll see in the text. And again, I'll show you some of them. Another reason that they have updated the test, other than non-relevant to modern life items that they removed, they also aligned the test now with the new NRS level descriptors from, I believe, 2017. So they aligned it to that. Overall, I think, from what I've seen, I think the test provides a little bit less opportunity for low literacy learners to do well. And I say that because I'm going to quick show you the first couple of pages of the old version. I'll call it the old version, even though it's still actually a valid assessment for this fiscal year. So this is the first page of the old version of the best literacy test, and it is just filling out a very simple form, their personal information. So we found that even quite low level students were able to be relatively successful on this first page. Whereas the first page, for example, of the new version of the test is this. And so these are the first questions on one form of the new test. This is quite different from, this level of skill required is quite different than that.
Yeah, that feels like locating information from the old word keys and CRC. And I'm really excited to see more about it was almost digital literacy, right? Point in that narrative, something about points of a website. Interesting.
Right. Yeah, there's some interesting things. And here, this is the old version again. This is another skill. This is the old test, which is something like this is not on the new test. Again, this is something that lower literacy students tended to be able to be successful on. And there's 2 pages of that. And very simple skills like this aren't found on the new version of the test. However, I will say that overall, I think the test may be a little bit easier. I would say actually it's more interesting. So I think the students will enjoy taking it a little bit more than the older version. I also think it requires more higher order thinking skills.
Amy, that was one of the things that I had noticed in the description as I looked at it in the past and again now today. It seems to mirror kind of the move in the ABE ASE realm to those higher level critical thinking skills above basic recall kinds of activities. And it seems like they're, the supporting an opinion especially is one of those that I thought, oh wow, That's not just requiring more sophisticated language, it's also requiring some higher order thinking. So get you calling that out.
Yeah, and there's some, let me actually, okay. As another example of that, again, I'm going back to my .cam here. Okay. Let me go out a little bit. You may not be able to read exactly everything you're seeing here. So here there's a big letter A. These are important when taking the test. Option 1, outdoor picnic table. Okay, I'm gonna go over here. Option B, which is on the next page, outdoor picnic site with grill. And then another page. There's questions about each one, of course. And then here's option C, with descriptions and some questions about it. And then down here, if you can see, I want to make you dizzy here. Look at A, B, and C, circle the answer, right? So they're kind of compiling and comparing each of these 3 options and choosing which one they should choose. And then the next page, they're giving a situation. Glenn wants to take his 2 children to the park, etc. Look at A, B, and C, which option is the best for Glenn? And they have to choose one and write why. And then a little bit further, you want to reserve a space in Southwood Park for a party, etc. And then you're writing about that subject.
Amy, I'm curious about the casting on that, because when you're asking people for their opinion, it bothers me when there's a wrong answer. I mean, I'm not seeing the option, so I don't know, is there one that's like a clear winner, or if you can support it, you get the points, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, I would say there's not really a clear, correct answer. And that's something interesting. Let me close this for a second. Ooh, this manual, I'm not super facile with this manual yet, but somewhere in these hundreds of pages, it says that as long as their answer is appropriate, it doesn't necessarily matter. How did they word it? Whether or not they're taking their information exactly from like the choices A, B, and C, if their answer is appropriate, it can still be kind of correct and they can receive full points for it. So I think of that as a Best Plus person who has Best Plus firmly ingrained in my brain. I think of that as a little bit similar to, say, showing a student a picture cue on the Best Plus test. There's a picture of people walking across the street in the rain. The street is really shiny, which looks kind of white in the photo, and many students think it's snow. So they talk about snow. However, that's not counted against them. It's not content-based. It's how well are they able to articulate. They understood the question and they give a reasonable answer or response. So I think it's really that same concept here.
And I think there's parallels to be drawn to the GED extended response, which is asking students to read 2 passages and then talk about which one is better supported. And it doesn't matter which one they pick, as long as their answer, pulls evidence from the text that they're using and makes sense, right? And is fairly decently written. So I think you really can pull some parallels there, right? There's not a right or wrong answer, which passage you say is better supported. It's the evidence that you provide. So I think, like you're saying, Amy, as long as you can do an appropriate response and your justification makes sense on some level, that's what you're looking at. So.
Yeah. And Cal is quite, explicit about that in the manual as well. So, and they give it lots of examples of that.
Is that a difference, Amy? So Best Plus 2.0 has subjectivity, and you talked about that, the picture with the reflection. The Best Literacy 2.0 has some subjectivity, right? And in determining that more open-ended writing exercise. Did the Best Literacy 1, the old version, have some subjectivity as well? Or is this kind of a departure where, to your point, it is more aligning with the nature of the current Best Plus?
Yeah, I would say that is a difference.
Okay,
In the old, right, the old
right.
version, there actually weren't really open-ended writing or answering question activities in it that the student would even give their opinion. It was just finding information or circling the correct answer and things like that. There was writing at the end, but there's a specific prompt. So it's not really giving their opinion. And
Yeah, it was like write a thank you note, wasn't it? Or an invitation. And so it's pretty clear cut what they're looking for there.
exactly, yeah. Mhm. Okay, so I'm going to step back just for a moment and talk just briefly about which students in your program you might want to take this test as opposed to a different assessment. At our program, we give this test to students who max out the Best Plus. And when I say max out, that means they receive a pretest with an exit NRS is what it says on the printout. Basically, it means it's past advanced. So if that's their post-test, that's okay. But if they're coming into your program and that's their pretest, or if that's their pretest for the new fiscal year, it's not a valid pretest. So those students we give the Best Literacy. So we've used it quite extensively in our program for many years. In your program, as far as comparing it, to the TABE, that's sort of your call. This does, because it's 60 minutes max, 60 minutes max. It could be a shorter option time-wise, depending on your situation.
Amy, sorry to interrupt you again. On that point, there's no reading involved where the instructor or the proctor has to read a passage for listening comprehension, or is it sort of set it and forget it? Give it to them, or just monitor and we collect them when they're done.
Right. In this version, which is new as well, there are sample questions at the beginning. So, and I can quick show them. And this reminds me of the TABE. Actually, this part of it reminds me of the TABE, where you are going through okay, so sample questions, it's just 2 pages, but you are going through these questions with the students orally, and of course they have the booklets in front of them as well. Some of the answers are filled out already because they're just examples, and some aren't. So then, can guide them. And here's the second page of the sample question. The Cal estimates that this takes about 10 minutes. Yeah, somebody had a question.
I did. So question about the short response writing. Can everyone hear me? I was having a microphone problem earlier. Can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. With the short answers, how stingy are we about grammar? For example, I have students who are beautiful readers, but I can't get them to write SVO, to save their lives. Do we ding them if they are grammatically incorrect? Do we ding them if they don't do so? How are we grading this? Is it on a scale? Is there a rubric?
There's so many rubrics. There's so many rubrics in this manual. And gosh, time is going fast. That is something I plan to get to later on, but yeah, we can address it now. No, perfect grammar is not necessary. Again, in that sense, it's similar to the Best Plus. Basically, as long as their answer is comprehensible and appropriate, the student can get full credit for the score, for for their writing. Yeah.
That's good. That's good because they, if they don't get dinged for that, because if it's understandable, even if they miss a word here and there or incorrectly conjugate, I don't think that should be held against them.
Right. And similar to Best Plus, again, Cal says, as a scorer, maybe you put yourself in the shoes of someone who doesn't normally interact with non-native speakers. And if you feel that someone like that could understand the answer, then it's not counted against them. Yeah. Okay. Right. As far as, I think there are students with literacy level too low that would really struggle to be very successful in this test. So going back to the point of how do you decide who in your program might take this test, who you might give this to? The high end of this test goes up to NRS level 5. That's the highest. So anything actually, and if they receive an NRS level 5 on this test, that would not be a valid pretest because it doesn't go any higher. So they would have to get an NRS level 4 or below. I think somebody who's literacy-wise, right, this is not oral, literacy-wise and an NRS level 1 or 2 would really struggle with this test, which means the range is somewhat limited, I have to say.
And Amy, I'm not asking you to defend or be an apologist, of course. And I just want to articulate this, and it may sound salty, but I mean, your program, given that you serve English language learners, refugees, secondary migrants, new Americans, etc., where I'm thinking about other programs, Southeast Tech Cornerstones, it's Black Hills, who have ESL programming, but also have adult basic and GED test prep where they more regularly use the TABE. I would just, press the question, is there a need for mixed programs like that to spend the time, the money, and the energies for what may be 12 to, I'd like you to take a look at your data, and we can talk about it in our next LACES meeting, but look back and see how many, and I'd like a refresher. What's the best way to pull those assessments? How many of our students had them? What percentage? And could we get by, to your point, it doesn't meet for an entry level 5. There is no level 6. So if we've gone through Best Plus oral, why not just transition to the TABE in most programs? TABE level E or M medium.
Yeah, and I have to say that, we'll see how it goes. Like I haven't used this on a lower literacy level student yet. So let me just show you guys a couple other pages that are a little bit farther on. Sometimes students surprise us. So, there's nothing like experience. So here, for example, this is page 8. I mean, this is relatively simple, but it's interesting that it doesn't start like this. The test is designed to start easier and progressively get harder. However, I might argue that page 8 is easier than page 1 in this case. And here is page 9, just so you can get an idea of what kinds of things are on here. I'll go on a little bit.
Does your document camera automatically provide that color overlay like that? God, that's slick. I haven't not seen that before.
It is doing it, and I don't know how to make it stop, to be honest.
To your point, you could make the argument easier. Is that because, and I've sat in on enough classes, I know LSS and others have modules about the weather. We talk ad nauseum about the weather, but what was on page 1? That was that time
community
schedule. Yeah. So
yeah, community center.
I can see that argument because, and I suppose that's akin to, okay.
Yeah. So it's interesting. I mean, everything on here is very practical, which I really like about this assessment. I honestly think other than maybe being slightly stressed, the students might actually enjoy the content of the test. But, oh, where is it? John, in particular wanted to, so there's a page in here where the student is, excuse me, I hope I'm not making you guys, where they're showing a text message. And the student has to respond to the text message, and I'm not finding that page at this moment. It might be in another form. There are 3 forms, by the way. I'll find it as soon as I close this meeting, probably. There's form 1, 2, and 3. There were also 3 forms of the old test, form B, C, and D. I don't know what happened to form A, but this one has forms 1, 2, and 3. Same colors, yellow, blue, and green. Obviously they're all supposed to be equally, calibrated to each other. So you give one form as a pretest and another form as a post. Yeah. And maybe as we go through it, I'll find a little text message, the text message one. But this one, Cal recommends that you could potentially post test after 40 hours of instruction. That's probably to be aligned with the Best Plus, which the new version Best Plus 3.0. That's the recommendation for Best Plus 3.0 as well. Our program has found with the old version of this test that students tended to need many more hours of instruction than that in order to show an NRS gain on the old Best Literacy. But this is a slightly different test, so we'll have to try it out. Overall, while I think the low level skills are perhaps there are fewer of them in this new version of the test, I think overall the test is, I hate to say easier. I think for higher level students, this test will not be quite as difficult. I'll say it that way, as the old version of the test, but more interesting. Cal says these things are obvious. They say don't duplicate questions. Keep your tests locked up when not in use. Of course, it's just typical ethical, right? You don't get to mail the books out to students, for example, to have them take the test at home.
Yeah, we had started to broach that in terms of distance programming. So it won't be viable for distance testing then. We would have to stay with the Best Plus or different computer-based assessment then, huh?
Not according to what I've read in the manual. I don't know how it would be possible to keep. Yeah, I don't know how it would be possible to do it. At the same time, I used to think that Best Plus couldn't be given on Zoom either, and
Yeah.
we all figured it out. But I have not seen any mention of that.
Because I understand if we send it in the mail, it's one thing, but it's another thing then the test taker has complete control over 1/3 of the entire instrument body and
Right.
could copy all those questions and then it goes onto the web. Yeah,
Right.
gotcha.
I don't see any way to get away from that.
And maybe you could probably interject how we, as a local program, have administered this for distance students, both in the current programming and during COVID programming.
Yeah, right. So we did have students during the COVID time who maxed out the Best Plus. Therefore, we had to give the Best Lit, and we had those students come into the office, just for 1 hour. You come in one time for 1 hour, and then you can be at home again for continue studying online. Yeah, Kim.
Yeah, and I know that doesn't necessarily always work for us because of our geography. And I think that might be the time that we would then have to do the TABE work because we can proctor the TABE online.
Okay.
I mean, that might be the situation where we have to use a tape. Unless, I'm not holding my breath, but that they would eventually get it more technologically driven instead of paper pencil driven.
Right, right. And once again, going back before about what we had talked about, who could take this test. I think most of us are familiar with the term SLIFE at this point, students with limited or interrupted formal education. I think for students like that, a test that's very life skills focused and everyday English focused would still probably be easier for them than, for example, the TABE, which is quite academic focused. So potentially students like that may be more successful with a test like this. Again, since this is new, we'll just have to try it out, right? And see what happens, but that would be my expectation. Cal says that each test takes about 7 minutes to score. And they suggest participating in scoring calibration periodically. I will show you guys in the back of this manual. Wrote down the page. Let's see. Yeah, in the back of the manual, there is a practice scoring section, and that's specifically for the writing. The other kinds of questions, multiple choice, etc. That's pretty easy. No one needs to practice that. But as far as scoring the writing, in the back, there are they give a lot of example answers, writing answers, and a score sheet for you to photocopy, and then look at the student example answers, and then at the end, of course, they tell you the Cal suggested score, and then you can see how you compare to that. So that could be a potential way to check your own writing scoring. I'm not on page 126, but I don't see it here. But that's in the back of this manual, if you choose to use that in your programs. Oh, let me get to, wow, time is just. Okay, let me show you very quickly. In the interest of time, I will show you my notes. Okay, these are just my talking points. I didn't mean to show you guys this, but it will save some time. So as far as the types of questions you'll see, for reading, there are yes, no questions, and those always appear in pairs. Multiple choice questions, and then what they call one fact questions. And let me keep it fun. I'll show you a little snippet of the student who took this test yesterday. There's no personal information here, so I can just show you her test. Okay, so what activity meets on Thursday mornings? Potter class. This would be what they would call a one fact question, reading question. These two are, of course, yes, no questions. And in these pairs, they always come in pairs. The student needs to get both answers correct in order to get a point. And to that end, let me just quickly show you, this is the scoring sheet. It looks very different from the previous scoring sheet, very, very different. So pottery and pottery class is what Cal would consider a correct answer for number 1. And since I can, I'm just going to go ahead and circle that one because, oh dear, the zoom out. Never mind. Excuse me. It's too hard to show both, isn't it? This is a slightly awkward.
No, I can see it now. That looks good.
Okay. And then 2A and 2B, for example.
Yes, no, so it's the 1 point for 2.
Yes.
Okay.
So yes, she got it correct. So you circle the little check mark here. And then is the gym in the 3rd floor? No. Correct answer is no. So that's also a check mark. She got it right. Since she got both of those correct, she gets 1 point for this thing. If she had gotten one wrong and one right, it's 0. So they have to get them both right. Okay. Let's just move on to the next one here. Okay. So number 3, she wrote Spanish and games. Okay, and you can see here on the score sheet, if you can see Spanish or Spanish and games. Okay, so obviously she got that right. That's a 1. And then 4 is just a multiple choice question. How much does the class cost? A, $10. Okay, A is the right answer. You circle 1, etc. So that's how that part goes. Let's just do 5, 6, and 7 just for fun so we can finish this little section.
Amy, question. I know this is anonymous, but I do know this person who this test was given to, and I'm their teacher. Am I allowed to look at this just to see how they're doing?
Yeah, I don't see why not. Okay, 5 is swimming or swimming activity.
Nice work, Kate. The student is ace in this test.
Can't take credit for it. She's only been in my class. Sorry, they have only been in my class for a short time.
Wow.
Okay, 6, she said C is right. 7 is B is right. Okay, so then in this little section, right, you add it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 goes in the box. And then the next section would be the writing, right? So you can see this would be an example of some of the writing activities that they would do. And by the way, I'm just going to put this on for a second so you can see there's 3 kinds of writing activities. I know we're running up to 4 o'clock. I won't take your time. Form and table tasks, sentence completion tasks, and then extended writing, which are not on this page. So this page would be form and table, and as they would call it, sentence completion. Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. On that score sheet, right, then up above, you would put that 7 on the left-hand square,
Right.
and then just complete it accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
You've got your reading score, scale score, raw score.
Right.
And
So
so what, you got a crosswalk between the raw score and scale scores then?
yeah, so once you're done with everything, there are similar to the old version of Best Literacy, there are charts in here, which I wrote down the page number somewhere. I'll just show you guys a score conversion chart. Okay, page 110. Okay. So here's an example of a score conversion chart. So this is for Form 1. There's another one for Form 2, Form 3, of course, and you convert the raw score into a scale score. And then write, of course, here's the raw, you just add things up, scale score goes here. And then there's another chart which converts to the NRS level, which is on page 87. So you're really flipping back and forth in this manual all the time.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how we are going to combine the reading and writing to get the NRS level here.
You know,
Oh,
here's what I understand from this, and I just looked at this last night because I entered a student score in, the one student who, one of the students who finished the test. So it seems to me that the reading section of this test goes up to level 5, intermediate, whereas the writing only and the composite, which is combined, only go up to level 4. We're so lucky. The student who took this test on Tuesday night, he got a perfect score in writing, which is 300, but he got a 261 in reading. And that is so lucky because now, as far as I can tell, we could show an NRS gain for him this fiscal year if he got 1 more point, so he could be a level 5.
Oh, wow. How about that? But what happens if they get a 1 score high and another level on the reading? How do we balance that composite? I don't think I understand that.
Yeah, Cal mentions in the manual that you can use the composite score if you choose. So I understand it's probably similar to what happens on the TABE. You could use either the reading or the writing to be their subject area for the fiscal year. That's what I understand.
Really?
Or you could use the composite. Yeah.
I would like to see this in LACES. Oh, wow. Okay.
I could, yeah, I entered this guy's score into LACES. I entered all 3 scores.
Did you?
Actually, no. Yeah.
And so
but
you had to identify reading versus writing?
you can, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Versus composite, huh?
Right, you can put in all 3, reading, writing, and composite. Since it hasn't rolled over to the new fiscal year yet,
Yeah, you can't.
no,
right.
it knows the NRS levels, but it doesn't show the students.
Right, until we roll over, you won't see that entry level.
Right. So, I know we have like no time. So I'm thinking, what is the very most important? I think what I'm gonna do for our program, because there is so much flipping one page to another in this manual, and there's very, very important information just all over the place in here. I think what I'm gonna do is photocopy what I consider to be the most important charts and rubrics and score conversion tables and all of those things. And, maybe make a 10-page sort of mini manual just of the very most important things that we'll use on a regular basis for scoring. Because I'm not super familiar with it yet, but it's very hard to find. Yeah, just so much page turning, and maybe put little tabbies on the manual so you can find things more easily. But I think I'm going to do the photocopy mini manual just for ourselves. But there's a lot of very good score examples. They give real student examples, and then justifications for why Cal gets them a 3 or a 2 or a 1 for these writing.
I think those are really where a lot of good conversations and learning and sharing and teaching can happen. I don't know if that'll ever be incorporated as part of the Best Plus training, as sort of an ancillary opportunity to crosswalk some of those practice opportunities. But Amy, I appreciate your efforts heretofore. And to you local providers, right? This is all very new to me and the program at large. And so we'll be looking to you and your classroom-based research on to what extent this serves your program and your students, and how we can best utilize it, and how we can, how will it affect instruction? Because I know there are many times where we sort of coach our students on certain mechanisms they can expect in the test. Why wouldn't we?
Yeah. So, overall, I like it. I think it's interesting. So I think it might be enjoyable for the students to take the test. And I have had fun reading their answers as well so far.
Any questions or comments or concerns that we can take as a program to inform further discussions, training, investments, etc.? And I know it's hard to know what you don't know until you have the manuals and materials, certainly.
Yeah. Right, certainly the manual, it's big, but you know, the first
I'm
time you score, you'll be looking through the score examples pretty heavily, so yeah, Kim.
So I'm curious, did you guys buy all 3 levels of the form right away to start with? Because it's $75 for each one of them, and
Well,
what if we decide we don't want it?
the website is not clear, it comes in packs of 20,
Yeah,
but yes,
that's
70
that's a lot of best plus or best lit assessments for us.
it is, yeah. We did end up purchasing all 3 forms,
Okay.
because we use it, and this test is approved through 2030, through the year 2030. Well, June 30th of 2030. So we'll use them, you know, for our purposes, we'll use them. But I know
It was
others,
75 for a pack of 20, is that right? Then
Right.
times
Then there's
3
3
and then the
levels.
manual.
Plus
Right.
the $44 manual.
yes.
Okay.
Well, we are presenting it as an option, as it's an approved assessment, and as a reminder, if you are instructor in a local program, talk to your local administrators about what's the best use of the assessment options for your program. It's not required that people use it in a certain way. We're sharing from our own experience how it benefits us and our students.
Absolutely. And
Oh, yeah, I appreciate that.
and what I imagine there's shipping and handling. So we're talking about a $300 initial investment to get the book and, you know, a pack of each of the 3 forms, if my math is correct. To Amy's point, they're good for how many years? One quick question, Amy, you know, normally we pre-test on TABE level 11 or on form 11, post-test on form 12. Here, is it recommended you pre-test on 1 and then post-test on 2, and then if you need another post-test on 3, or does it say whatever you want to do?
Yeah, they didn't make any such recommendations. It's mix and match. You
Right.
can pre-test on 3 and post-test on 1 if you like. Mhm. Yeah, sometimes we choose depending on if we have, say, a group of 3 students.
Oh,
Testing,
so, yeah, so they have different forms. Good. Yeah, that makes sense.
just give them all different colors.
Sure. Are these color coded as well?
They are same
Okay.
color. Yeah. Very familiar. So yeah, I know we're a little over time, but if anyone else has burning questions, I can I can stay on later if anyone else has other questions to ask. I may or may not know the answer because I'm new myself, but I'm available, and our program will be using this test quite a bit. So in the future, if you know, if you
Yeah.
feel like you want to ask any questions to me or whoever, you're welcome to email me.
I think maybe when we do a T3 with the teachers, talking to teachers who want, that'd be a great to do an update of how you're doing at that point with it, because yeah, it would be interesting to see. Because, you know, we were also jaded with the old version, like, really, a bus schedule is super important here and here on, you know?
Right. Yeah, there's not stuff like that anymore. So
Yeah, so that'll be interesting to get your guys' feedback on how much it was. Just unless you taught the specific skill, which was obsolete to your student, is like there was no way for them to make a gain. So I'll be excited to see how these more well-rounded questions will affect you guys.
yeah. Oh, and here's the one with, this is a different form, I guess, has the little, like a text message from somebody, and then you're supposed to answer them. Like which medicine they should buy. Your friend has a stomachache, which medicine should they buy, A, B, or C? And obviously you just didn't answer. You should buy stomach relief with the Pepto-Bismol because it helps you with the indigestion, pain, nausea, and many more. And the last but not least, it has a cherry flavor. That, I love it.
Wow.
I know, and that made me laugh. But not
Personally, I prefer bubble gum, but it's okay.
As long as it's not orange.
Anyway, cute. So yeah, we'll keep you guys updated and feel free to
Thank
ask
you.
questions if you would
Thank
like.
you very much.
Thank you guys. Sorry, we're over time.
Thank you for doing this, Amy. Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Amy.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.